Muhammad Gaddafi, the former Libyan leader, was one of Africa's rulers who left a very strong mark on the continent. He spent his life reinventing himself and is widely remembered for his push for the United States of Africa. Even after 40 years in power, Muhammad Gaddafi had grand ambitions for his country and Africa. The story of his downfall is greatly centered around love, money, and betrayal, but the landmark he created is still one of the most remarkable in the 21st century. During his reign, Muhammad Gaddafi showed much love towards a particular country, its people, and the president of this country. But at the end of it all, it was this same president, the same one he considered his friend, that betrayed him. So which country is this, and who is its leader? The country we are talking about here is Uganda, and the leader that betrayed Gaddafi was no other than the Ugandan leader who propagated his betrayal. In 2016, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda wrote a letter criticizing the United States and the African Union for their intervention in Libya and the wide Middle East region. He also stated that the US and the European Union had no business dislodging Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein of Iraq. But why did Museveni betray Gaddafi? Before we get in deep into why, let us see how they even got close to each other, how they became friends, and what really happened that Museveni had to betray his own friend. Gaddafi's relationship with Uganda didn't just start when Museveni came to power. Gaddafi had been a longtime friend of Uganda. His relationship with this country he loved so much started as far back as the 1970s during Idi Amin's regime. He provided so much support for this nation, moral, economic, and military support to Amin's government during this period. Each time Idi Amin's government was faced with an attack, there would always be one person who would come to his rescue, sending troops and military support. It was no other person but Gaddafi. But all his support and friendship ended in him being betrayed, as you will soon find out what happened. Let us know if you are enjoying this video by hitting the like button and subscribing to the New Tourist channel. After so many attacks and resistance against Idi Amin, he fled the country in 1979 for Libya, where he later on moved and settled in Saudi Arabia. After Amin was overthrown in 1980, Uganda decided to organize an election to choose its next leader. The result did not favor Museveni, so he would do what any other power-hungry person would do. He claimed the elections were rigged and that it was unfair. This dragged Uganda into a civil war between Museveni and the other opposition. Museveni and his army ran short of weapons and ammunition during this war. He would need help from somewhere. He just had to win this war. He was too power-hungry. So what did he do? He had to look for help. He approached no other but the US and the UK for arms help. His request was turned down because of his closeness with Muhammad Gaddafi. He then went to Gaddafi, the closest friend of his country. Gaddafi never hesitated. Gaddafi gave him all the help he needed, gave him military supplies, and he emerged victorious. Gaddafi gave his support on several occasions, including the Ugandan Civil War of 1986, which Museveni still emerged victorious. After the defeat of Paul Kawanga Samougerir, Libya trained Museveni's military. In fact, Museveni even named his secret intelligence agency after its Libyan counterparts. That's how much love and support Gaddafi showed Museveni. Gaddafi visited Uganda frequently, which would make one think it was his second home. He invested a lot in Uganda and built so many infrastructures. Gaddafi, through the Libyan African portfolio, invested and bought 51% of shares in Uganda's telecommunications corporation, Uganda Telecom, and 60% shares of the textile company known as TriStar Limited. Gaddafi even convinced Museveni not to sell Uganda's unrefined oil to Europe and the West. He promised him he'd help him build a refinery and pipelines to Kenya and other neighboring countries. That wasn't all. Gaddafi also made thunderous investments in the finance and real estate sectors of Uganda's economy, which included the investment he made in the Tropical Bank of Africa, National Housing Corporation, Lake Victoria Hotel, and so many other companies. One other fact you have to note is that through Museveni, Gaddafi also funded the RPF rebels after they invaded Rwanda in 1980. The support he gave them included arms that were flown into Uganda by the Museveni regime. That is how deep their friendship was. which is what made the betrayal even more painful. Let us also take a look at Gaddafi's interest in the Turo Kingdom. Muhammad Gaddafi developed an interest in this kingdom, located within the borders of Uganda in 2001. At this time, its ruler, King Oyo Nyimba, was just 9 years old. Because of his extreme love for this kingdom, Muhammad Gaddafi financed the majority of the projects there, including the construction of the Turo Palace. Gaddafi left a lasting legacy in the Ugandan Muslim community. He contributed voluminously to the construction of the magnificent mosque there, which has a capacity of holding at least 3,000 faithful. This mosque is the second largest in Eastern Africa. Gaddafi even joked with Museveni, asking him to rule for life during his visits to Uganda. He went further, asking him why he even bothered going for elections. On one of his visits there, he promoted one of Museveni's sons in the military from captain to major. In the 2001 and 2006 presidential elections, Gaddafi supported Museveni to carry out his campaigns. Their relationship seemed so strong and unbreakable, but that was not the case till the end. What actually prompted Museveni to pull down Gaddafi? We shall examine this in two main parts, which are Western interests and Muhammad Gaddafi's ambitions. As you might already know, Muhammad Gaddafi is the highest person talked about each time the idea of a United States of Africa has been raised.
His ideas for African unity involve the creation of a United States of Africa.
Just like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. Gaddafi poured a lot of effort into the quest for African unity. During a summit held in 1989, Gaddafi succeeded to convince 45 heads of state to approve the creation of an African Union, which replaced the Organization of African Union. For more than 10 years after this, Gaddafi stood as the most popular advocate for this union. Still, in 1989, he came up with the idea of the United States of Africa, which he envisaged will have a single currency and military. The African Union, according to him, was to be used as a facilitator for this dream of his. Roughly 15% of the money used to finance projects of the African Union came from Libya during Gaddafi's reign. This, however, was a scary idea to Western powers and some African leaders who thought this will distort their prestige, influence, and position in the continent. The idea brought division among African leaders on the matter. Surprisingly, Yoweri Museveni was also against this idea. Museveni was a man that Gaddafi had helped a lot in the past and even made him gain much power in Uganda. He had invested a lot in his country and backed him in times of need. Why did Museveni disagree with Gaddafi's idea of creating the United States of Africa? First, it was a threat to his grip on power in Uganda.
So I'm aware of Mr. Gaddafi's approaches and efforts to get a foothold in your part of Africa and all. And I just like to intervene and caution.
He appreciated Gaddafi's take in a flattery manner, but did not actually fight for the course. He refused to be ruled by another leader. It will either be him or no one else. Secondly, Museveni's power was becoming much felt in the region, and in this position, he served the interest of the West through military actions in countries like Somalia. He also provided intellectual support to the CIA leaders.
Mr. President, I started fighting Gaddafi before you started. I started fighting Gaddafi before you started.
With this, he prioritized the interest of the West before those of his African compatriots. When this decision was finally tabled in an African Union meeting in Accra, Ghana in 2007, Museveni fiercely shot it down. He feared that supporting the idea of African unity will create problems between him and the Western powers. He was aware that these people kept him in power and could oust him from there at any moment. Museveni was also afraid that, upon betraying Gaddafi, he will face some difficulties in his military and financial whereabouts. He knew so well that resisting Gaddafi was far easier than resisting the West. The betrayal of Gaddafi was accelerated by Museveni's reactions. On June 13, 2008, during his son's graduation in the United States, Museveni expressed his consent to the Assistant Secretary General of State for African Affairs, Jende Fraser. He said he did not deem a united Africa necessary due to linguistic and cultural differences. He went further to say that Gaddafi bribed small African countries to support him and made it difficult for them to speak out during African Union and other international meetings. Museveni noted that tensions with Gaddafi, which kept growing, will result in an attack on his plane while flying over international space. He requested help from the United States of America, which he did receive. Gaddafi was not so worried about Museveni's relationship with America, but his popularity in Uganda. When Gaddafi paid a surprise visit to Uganda in 2008, Museveni's government saw it as a plotted attack on their president. During a 37-minute talk at an Arab youth event in Uganda, Gaddafi switched talk and said that he wanted now to work with traditional leaders and not elected presidents to achieve his plans for the United States of Africa. In 2009, he brought together some African traditional leaders to discuss the unity of the continent. When this came to Museveni's notice, he blocked Ugandan traditional rulers from attending the meeting. Museveni had convinced Gaddafi that the United States president at the time, George Bush, removed sanctions on Libya and will carry out investment in his country if he destroyed his weapons of mass destruction. After talks with some British diplomats, Gaddafi was told that Museveni had sold him alive.
Declare and then to begin to dismantle the nuclear program and the chemical weapons program. You said at the time that Libya expected some enormous benefit, a very real benefit. And many people in Libya say they're still waiting for that benefit. What is Libya waiting for? What do you expect from the West?
I don't believe America fulfilled its commitments and pledges vis-à-vis Libya regarding this point. We have been told that President Bush is a man that honors his own word, and so far we are not so sure of that.
What specifically are you waiting for the U.S. to do? What complaint do you have with President Bush?
This was Gaddafi's greatest mistake that led to his downfall. He did not own a strong nuclear weapon that could neutralize NATO forces. Museveni since then has been trying to step into Gaddafi's shoes to champion African unity in finance and security. He is strong in some areas, but he lacks the charisma and financial power to carry out this project. He might not be supported even if he achieves this. Even the West will not, because it is the same reason they fought Gaddafi. In 2021, during one of his speeches, Museveni mentioned that the plans of the Western powers were narrow ones, and surprisingly, these are the same people that he had sold Gaddafi to. The mosque, which was built in Uganda and named the Gaddafi Mosque, was renamed 2 years after his downfall to appease their government.
Now, close to 2 years after Gaddafi was killed, the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council has dropped the name to appease the current Libyan government.
The only thing Museveni could have done was not to blackmail Gaddafi, because he was the only African leader he feared most. It is certain that when Museveni's time to drop power will come, no one will be there to save him. That's where we round off the video on the man who betrayed Muhammad Gaddafi. Hope you enjoyed watching it. Leave a comment in the box below to tell us your mind on this finding, and before we take leave of you, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our interesting content. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next video.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us.